When I was 22 years old, I was detained for being a university student activist in Iran and sent to the notorious Evin prison. I actively participated in an organized student-led protest against the government's oppression of its own people. I spent the first 39 days in solitary confinement. It was during my second arrest in 2012 that I met two extraordinary women of the Baha'i faith: a psychologist, Fariba Kamalabadi, and a poet and a teacher, Mahvash, Sabet. At that point, Fariba and Mahvash had already been in prison for 4 years, simply because they had served in the leadership group of the Baha'i community of Iran. As Iran's largest non-Muslim religious minority, Baha'is have suffered more than 4 decades of systematic persecution, including forced evictions, home raids, property confiscations, and executions. The regime has made them a target of hate speech and regime propaganda. And on top of all these cruel injustices, Baha'i students are denied permission to study in universities. The plight of the Baha'i community in Iran is not just a simple religious issue, it's a human rights crisis. Since the beginning of August 2022, over 500 members of the Baha'i community have faced persecution in a community of only 300,000 in Iran. In fact, in 1991, the Supreme Leader signed a document essentially called on all government entities and agencies to block the progress of Baha'is in Iran. So basically, after the Islamic Revolution, attack on Baha'is and their persecution became a government policy. Fariba and Mahvash were released in 2017 after serving an unjust and cruel sentence of 10 years. Just a few years after their freedom in 2022, Fariba and Mahvash were re-sentenced to another decade behind bars. The judge at their very brief trial said that they had not learned their lesson, that is to stop speaking out on behalf of their long persecuted faith. My time in prison, particularly with Fariba and Mahvash, was very transformative. It opened my eyes to the harsh reality of religious persecution in Iran. When I was in prison in 2012, a plurality in the women's ward were Baha'is, 9 out of 29 women in the board, including these two inspiring women. Despite their own sufferings, Fariba and Mahvash became pillars of strength and compassion, not only for me, but for all the inmates in the women's ward. Their impact in my life was so large that I even told my interrogator in one of the sessions that my arrest was a blessing, because it led me to meet these incredibly selfless women. My interrogator became irritated and began yelling, saying that I was stupid because these Baha'is are pretending to be nice, to try and trick me into converting them into their religion. Solitary confinement can easily break the person, even if it is for a brief duration. Fariba and Mahvash were in solitary confinement for so long, and every time I asked them about their experience, they didn't reveal any details. They only said it was an honor to serve the Baha'i community, and the hardest part for them was not knowing what was happening to their community. Baha'is have been mistreated for so long, but they are the source of hope. I remember when I was finally allowed to see my parents after a long solitary confinement, I was extremely nervous. I didn't want them to see me in that state. While I was waiting for them to call my name in the waiting room, I met a very kind gentleman. Even though we didn't know each other at all, he could see how nervous I was. He came forward and said in a very calming voice that we were all chosen to be here. You should be very happy and proud that God has picked you, and so should your parents. These were extremely powerful words for a non-religious person like me. Later, I found out that that man was Evin, one of the 7 imprisoned Baha'i leaders. It may seem strange to say, but looking back at my time with Fariba, Mahvash, and the other women in Evin, I'm thankful to have been in prison, especially with the Baha'is. And if I go back, I would have done it all over again.